All right, I have not been watching Gary's videos for a couple months now, but I did see Styzor took a clip from Gary commenting on the height of the day Styzor and myself hangout on ephilism, in which I had said that I was talking about how it doesn't make sense to say that suffering is an objective negative, but to ignore joy, to ignore, and one of the examples I gave, the joy of uh, you're watching your children grow up. So I have 3 points I've written down here to make sure I touch on all three about this. Um, well, I'll start with the zeroth or fourth initial preface point. This is why, I mean, Styzor said, if you want, I'll take the video down. This is why I don't take the just don't think about it approach to miserable and tragic events in my life. If anything, people tend to tell me I think about them too much and go over and over and over. But the practical advantage of that, I mean, to a certain degree, I'm just disposed to be that way. But the practical value of it is that it sort of emotionally toughens you up, so that a comment like Gary made, while pretty hurtful and cruel, I suppose, it doesn't puncture some balloon of I'm trying not to think about it over here. Uh, and especially since I did feel that I needed to share and tell people that had happened. I haven't gone into much detail about it or my thinking on it, and it occurs to me maybe I should. It's because when people shared their experiences with me after I did mention it, that was helpful to me. So maybe it's something I should go into more. But I definitely have thought it through a lot, and this will be relevant in the third point I'm going to make. So first, Gary's approach is basically, kind of the perfect opposite, the other side of the coin of the ends justify the means. He's saying that if the ends are tragic, well, then of course, how you got there is tragic. I said the joys of watching a child grow up. So that was joyful experience, and it doesn't suddenly become unjoyful because she died. So would that make sense? Would that be compassionate and positive for me to say, it was a terrible misery, her dying, therefore I didn't even enjoy knowing her? It wasn't joyful, it was miserable too. Would that would make sense for me to switch around and betray my true feelings because of something that's happened later? Just to be clear, it was not joyful seeing her dead. It wasn't joyful finding her dead in the morning. It wasn't joyful trying to do CPR on her dead body for 10 minutes. That was definitely not joyful. But knowing her was a source of a great deal of joy, and sort of the dissonance between those two things is also, there's a lot of meaning in there about how things come about the misery of the world. Second point is, I'll refer to Glynos as this great, or maybe it's Glynos, who's making these cartoons I very much enjoy. They poke fun at me and other people, but I find them very clever. And it's it's an animated series, pro antinatalist, and he is making the point really well that other antinatalists have made when he's with a psychiatrist. And this came up in our hangout too with Styzor and Heithel today. But making the point that the psychiatrist is saying, oh, well, you think your life is miserable, that's why you have this antinatalist view. And Glynos is like, no, if anything, it's that I have it so good just from luck, from being born in the part of the world that I'm born in, and other people just from their luck are have this perpetual miserable life. Well, that works both ways. If you add up all the joy and misery of my life, at this point, it looks like it might end up being a negative tally. That the only positive aspect is my ability to deal with the misery and enjoy the joy. Um, but I can still have a philosophy based on the potential for joy in the world. And I think the predominance of misery has to do with the history of war and slavery, which is something that a lot of people say can't be overcome. It's human nature, but I don't see any reason that it can't be overcome. And furthermore, I see a strong will among, granted, a minority of people to keep working on that. And I believe that day can come. And if it never comes, I still believe there's the potential of that, and that it's worth fighting for and working for, rather than just giving in to the miserable. The third point is that it's a pretty lame way that Gary has of arguing. And I don't mean the cruel part of it, the potentially cruel part of that. Because let's just say, okay, maybe that was the point. I think the lameness of it is to think that I haven't thought about this. When I said that at the time, I thought of my daughter. If I'm around children, I basically have a post-traumatic stress symptom, and it's not PTSD because I'm still functional. But that's always kind of arbitrary, right? Like, what's functional. But I am having, these kind of symptoms, and one of them is if I go somewhere that there's families, or if the word children is mentioned, I think of my daughter and this tragic end of her life. So, uh, I myself was already thinking about that, and I have thought about this subject obviously a lot. And you'd think that someone would know that, and so to bring it up, almost like some sort of a cruel gotcha, or not cruel, but some sort of powerful gotcha, seems like a really, it's just more of this preaching to the choir, which over time is all that Gary seems able to do. So that's my answer, and I guess there's no reason really to summarize. I mean, it was 3 points, each of which was the summary of an argument that can be given in more detail. So anyway, I guess it shows why I've decided not to keep watching Gary at the moment, at least, because really I think I know everything about Gary's arguments. I'm an expert in Gary's arguments. If people do want to be arguing with Gary, they can come to me, and I'll tell you what he's going to say. And if Gary ever changes, then my knowledge might get out of date, but I don't know that there's a strong likelihood of that. Yeah, I was just thinking under what conditions I would talk to Gary again, because there are some. But okay, all right. Cheers.